At its worst, the fire covered 500,000 hectares. In dollar terms, the damage it did to Fort McMurray has already added up to more than $3.8 billion. And the rebuilding is far from done. Joining us now to find out where things stand with that northern Alberta city 1 year later, let's welcome representatives from 3 non-governmental organizations. In Calgary, Alberta, Jen McManus, Vice President, Alberta and Northwest Territories for the Canadian Red Cross. And here in our studio, Paul Hassanali, Incident Commander with Team Rubicon, which unites military veterans with first responders on emergency response teams, and Brent Davis, Response Director for Samaritan's Purse Canada. That's a Christian relief and development charity, and we are delighted to welcome you two here in our studio, and Jen McManus, you in Calgary, Alberta, to our program tonight. Let's just start with a look 1 year after the fire back. Sheldon, if you would, a map of what the perimeter of it all looked like a year ago, just an astonishing large chunk of the province of Alberta. And Jen, I'll go to you first on this. When this fire broke out and when you first heard about it, where were you?
Hi, Steve. Well, we had been monitoring the fire over the course of the weekend before the evacuation notice of May 3rd of last spring. I was actually in Calgary with my team leads. And then I quickly headed north, rushed north. So I was between Lac La Biche, Wandering River, and Edmonton for a good portion of the first couple of weeks. And really, the event itself was so harrowing and so quick that it's hard to remember those first couple of days.
How close to it all did you actually get?
Well, we weren't in Fort McMurray directly, obviously because of the mandatory evacuation. I was with residents who had evacuated in Wandering River about 2.5 hours outside of the RMWB catchment area, and then in Lac La Biche, and really in the northeast quadrant of the province for the entire month of May.
Paul, what took your organization to this site?
2 of my colleagues at Team Rubicon were working on preparing for a fall launch of the organization. And in May, when this event occurred, they called me up, and I was in an army exercise at the time.
Whereabouts?
In Petawawa, Ontario, with 2 Brigade. And they asked if I could go down there and help stand up the Team Rubicon mission there. So we got a lot of help from Team Rubicon USA and Team Rubicon Global to establish the mission.
So everybody kind of converged.
Yeah, and we actually had volunteers from 5 countries come under the Team Rubicon banner to help with the repatriation and the cleanup of efforts that we were doing in Fort McMurray.
All vets?
Mostly veterans, but our membership and our volunteers are mostly made up of veterans, first responders, and what we call kick-ass civilians. So those are civilians with skills like emergency managers or medical professionals that would be useful in the post-disaster kind of getting the community back on its feet. So I would say about 80% of our volunteers are veterans.
And how many numbers altogether? How many people did you get up there to the site to help?
Well, starting from 7 volunteers and growing our particular response organization for our work that we were doing there to 386 within a matter of days.
Huh, terrific. Okay. Brent, how about you? You obviously heard about it. What did you do then?
Yeah, I was actually in Niagara at the time on holidays with my family and watching the images.
Niagara as in Ontario?
In Ontario, yeah.
Because you're an Alberta guy.
I am. Originally from Ontario. But, yeah, vacationing with family, saw the images coming across the news. And, yeah, from the media and what we were looking at, it was hard to imagine there was going to be anything left.
Okay, so you sprung into action and did what?
Yeah, so our team immediately started making connections both with the province as well as municipally in the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, trying to get a handle on the size and the scope and the magnitude. Obviously, as Jen mentioned, it was such a chaotic environment that very difficult in those early days to start to get a handle on what the extent of the damage was going to be. And from there, we move forward with assessing not just provincially, but then moving municipally once we were permitted back into the community, and then started coordinating with municipal officials to bring help to those who needed it.
Well, as those pictures indicate, some people got frighteningly close to the fires in order to assist and do what they could. How close did you get?
Well, we. In terms of our volunteer scope, we aren't going to put our volunteers in any spot where they're going to be lives are going to be threatened. And so from there, we're going to wait until the evacuation order is lifted before we start bringing volunteers in. I think all of us are in that same boat. There was a small cadre of leadership that we were able to get in just ahead of residents so that we could be prepared. So as residents began to return to their community, we weren't scaling up. We were there ready to help.
How many people?
So over the course of 2 months, we mobilized just over 900 daily volunteers, and we were able to assist 491 residents.
Terrific. Jen, how was it that essentially everybody got out? It was quite astonishing that as the fire was actually happening, nobody perished in that fire. Now, there were a couple of casualties, I understand, a couple of days later, but how was it that the casualty count was just so low and nobody was trapped and nobody died in the flames?
Well, you know, Steve, I think it's quite remarkable, given the scale and scope of this disaster, that nobody, as you just mentioned, was injured on the evacuation. We must remember that this part of Alberta and this part of Canada is a safety-first community, with the energy sector so highly invested in the regional municipality of Wood-Buffalo. We have a good portion of community members that are very safety-aware, first-aid trained, work and support the local economy and the energy sector. In addition, the first responders were outstanding. You know, hats off to the firefighters, RCMP, the deployment of first responders from across Western Canada and Alberta was really quite remarkable. And, you know, I don't want to say it out loud, but I think, too, there was an element of luck here, really. A third major disaster in Alberta. Each one we've learned from the 2011 wildfires in and around Slave Lake, the floods of 2013, and now this event. And as Brent has mentioned, liaising with the Provincial Operations Centre and the Emergency Operations Centre in Wood-Buffalo was essential to try and get a grasp of what was happening on the ground.
Brent, how close did the fires come to actual oil sands exploration projects?
They came dangerously close.
So the question then becomes, you know, what would have happened had those lands become part of the fire?
Yeah, certainly I don't want to speculate on that sort of disaster, but there were a lot of eyes watching the direction and the path of travel, and a lot of energy and effort that was...
Just help us. You see the map there. Okay, so that's the perimeter of the actual fire. I don't think you have to be an expert to realize, you know, a whole bunch of people dodged a bullet here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
the unpredictability of the fire as well really contributed to the uncertainty of what was going to be impacted. And so when the oil sands sites and industry actually took in evacuees because the entire population of Fort McMurray couldn't evacuate south, there was a significant number of residents that evacuated to the north and were housed by industry, and then had to be evacuated out of the area.
Well, that's what I want to find out from Paul. I mean, the reality is when you're trying to get thousands of people to leave someplace, you got to put them somewhere. Where were you trying to get people to go?
So during the evacuation, Team Rubicon wasn't actually there. But from what I understand from the municipality, they had they drew a line within the municipal boundaries and said that if the residents were north of the line, they would evacuate north to the camps. And if they were south of the line, then they would evacuate south to the next municipalities down. So that was done in order to be able to get everyone out in a timely and orderly fashion instead of clogging up the one route.
And that was my next question. Jen, you know, as these things go, how orderly / timely / effectively did the evacuations actually go?
It was quite remarkable, Steve. In all honesty, you know, we registered over 65,000 families on our online portal, and you know, we had upwards of 90,000 people on the move in Alberta. We geo-mapped registrations across Canada, literally from coast to coast to coast. So not only was there significant movement of people in Alberta, but there were people moving across the country at rapid pace to be housed with relatives and family and friends. I think this is a huge opportunity for Canadians to take a look at how we need to be prepared to either face a disaster, or also to host individuals and families who are removed from a community at such short notice.
Before we further consider that question, though, I don't know what the total number of students who still had 2 months to go in their school year. I'm not sure what would have happened to all of them, but do you have any information on what happened to their school years and whether they got to finish those school years, or whether the school boards just called it a day and said, you're going to pass anyway and don't worry about the rest of the year? Or how did all that work itself out?
Well, it was a combination of all of those things, actually. There were graduations that happened into June and July. The Canadian Red Cross helped fund some of those graduation ceremonies for students and teachers who were displaced. There was lots of conversation. The government of Alberta actually had an open town hall during the evacuation phase, and there was a representation from the Ministry of Education talking about exactly those situations. I think generally speaking, the school boards in Alberta gave students a very gracious pass on what happened last spring, and students hit the books when they returned back in September.
Gotcha. Paul, I want to get a better understanding of, once you and your team make the decision that you want to be helpful and it's time to go to Alberta and it's all hands on deck, what do you do at that point? How do you know who to liaise with? How do you know how to be helpful, what to do, who you should be taking orders from, who you should be giving orders to? I mean, it just seems like there are myriad questions that you've got to figure out as the incident commander. How do you begin to figure all that out?
That's a great question. So to get started with this mission particularly, and most other missions that Team Rubicon takes on, when we first are gathering information on whether there's scope for a Team Rubicon mission in response to a disaster, we would send a small reconnaissance team ahead of the main body of volunteers.
How many people would that be?
Between 3 and 5, usually.
And who do they liaise with?
And they'll each have their own kind of scope to look at, like for logistics, where the volunteers are going to stay, for what authorities we're going to be working under, who's actually in charge of leading the response to the emergency, and how Team Rubicon can plug in to assist with them. And a lot of it would be what kind of equipment and supplies that we need to get the work done as well.
Well, here's your team in action. This is Team Rubicon in Fort Mac. You want to bring this picture up, Sheldon? Tell us what we're seeing here.
So here we have some Team Rubicon volunteers, and they're sifting a resident's house that's been burnt down, and they're looking for any keepsakes or important items of value that resident wants to get back from the footprint of their house before the properties in the area are bulldozed and cleaned up so that the rebuilding phase can begin.
Now, do you get as specific as knowing who owned that property, what they might be looking for, what you should be on the lookout for, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. We did 903 of these property-specific sifts, and the homeowner was actually there with the team leader, directing them on what they were looking for, what corner of the house it might be located in. And the reason that we're using our volunteers to do this work on their behalf is because after the fire, the footprint of the house was considered to be a hazardous materials area because of all the things that may have burned there.
Which is why you're all suited up.
Exactly. They're wearing level C hazmat protection. And the municipality had sprayed a kind of paper mache-like substance over top of everything to keep the ashes and everything from blowing around. So we would try to disturb that as least as possible when we were looking for their items that we were recovering.
And for the record, were any of your people injured or harmed or damaged at all by the work that you were doing?
Absolutely not, no. We had some heat kind of challenges because it was the middle of summer, it was June, and they're basically being taped into a Tyvek suit, which is the equivalent to being taped into like a Ziploc bag, right?
So it's like
you're in there in the
40
heat.
degrees inside that suit.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, and they're getting dressed and doing that for 4 hours at a time or so.
Okay, Sheldon, let's go to the second photo as well, because we've got another one of Team Rubicon at work here. Look at that. Okay, what are we seeing here?
So that would be one of the volunteers looking for an area being directed by the resident through the team leader. So it's kind of like Marco Polo in the beginning, where the resident says, okay, I had an item and I think it was in this corner of the house, and then they're kind of moving the person around before we actually start to dig or sift for anything.
Did you actually find anything of either sentimental or actual value that could be saved?
Oh, we found countless things like that. So In some cases, we found family heirlooms like military medals from grandparents.
That survived a fire?
Yeah. It was kind of odd. Some things that would survive and some other things that wouldn't. In another case, we found an almost intact board game set from Monopoly with the paper money still intact.
That's astonishing.
Yeah, in other cases, we found family heirloom china. So things that would traditionally stand up to heat, like ceramics and glass, we had better luck finding. Things like jewelry were kind of melted down. But in other cases, we weren't able to find exactly what they were looking for, but they were able to get an heirloom back from the house, and that became their new family heirloom.
Fascinating. And of course, after you left and that mission was over, the bulldozers come in and they just raze everything. Is that right?
Yeah, there was a phased approach that was being planned by the municipality for each zone to be able to kind of consolidate the insurance kind of coordination of how they would take that down.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to just raise another issue here. Jen, let me go to you first on this, and that is, it is frequently the case in very intensive operations such as this that you get first and second and third responders exhibiting signs of, for example, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, after their work is done. And Jen, I wonder whether any of your volunteers or your people exhibited those symptoms after their work was done.
Thanks, Steve, for asking the question. It's a really important area of discussion that I think we need to open up more about. So the Canadian Red Cross has activated over 3,200 personnel for this response in regional municipality of Wood Buffalo. This is our largest domestic response since World War II, to set the context. And we have had safety and well-being best practices on the ground with all of our volunteers and personnel since the deployment on May 3rd of last spring. And this is tiring work. There's no doubt about it. This work takes a lot of self-care. It takes a lot of support from community members and families to allow us to do this work. As a leader, I myself have activated wellness best practices and been speaking with a clinical psychologist since last spring. I mean, you can't help people unless you help yourself. And we have daily debriefs with our team who are still on the ground in Fort McMurray. We had teams across the province and across Canada that we were debriefing with. It takes a lot of diligence and a lot of effort to make sure we take care of our people. And we will have people that say this is not the work that they can do anymore. And the Canadian Red Cross knows that volunteers take their precious vacation time from family to do this work. And people need a little bit of downtime too, so rest afterwards is really important.
Can I just confirm that I heard you accurately there? Did you say that you sought counseling as well to help you get through all this?
Absolutely, and I still am, Steve. You know, I am in this province. I meet families almost on a day-to-day basis here in Alberta who have either chosen not to return to go back to Wood Buffalo or are still trying to make up their minds. And so I am on airplanes, I am on the streets, and I talk to families all the time when I'm in Fort McMurray as well. You know, I'm hearing stories of marriage breakup, financial stress, children not sleeping through the evening. And it is really, really challenging to be in this work all the time, and you have to take care of yourself.
Has the counseling been helpful to you?
Absolutely. And you need to set personal parameters as well. I mean, I'm sure Paul and Brent have the same practices among their own teams and organizations. It's really important to know your limits, because you can't do the good work that's impactful unless you take care of yourself.
Well, since you've posed it, let me follow up on the question. Brent, how about you and your teams? Any PTSD experience that you know of?
Yeah, certainly. You know, critical incident stress management is something that is very important to us. We recognize, as Jen mentioned, these are long, long days. They're intensive. It's an intensive environment, but it's not just the physical stress and what it takes to make, you know, a 16, 18-hour day, but it's also interacting with people who have lost everything, and so you're suffering along with people. And our volunteers every day, when they go out to a site to do a SIFT, they're standing with a homeowner, looking at their house, and the homeowner's trying to figure out, where do I go next? Some of them, this is the first time they've seen their property. And so for our volunteers to stand with them, provide that support, they need to come back and they need to get filled up. One of the things that we do is we actually don't deploy without deploying chaplains alongside our teams. So every team that goes out, even a small work team that goes out to a site, they deploy with a trained chaplain who's they're trained in critical incident stress management, they're trained in psychological first aid, and they have that, they're not professional counselors, but they have the training and credentials behind them to at least be able to stand and listen and help somebody process, at least initially, those first few moments.
Well, I was going to ask about that because, of course, professional psychological or psychiatric counselors can be brought to bear in the case of PTSD, but yours being a sort of a religious-based organization, a Christian organization, I wonder whether, well, you've just sort of told us. Explain a little more about how religion, and I presume prayer, plays a role in your work in a way that it might not with other organizations.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Obviously, as a Christian organization, our faith is what motivates what we do, but it also brings a unique dynamic to the work that we do. We find that people that have gone through disasters, they're not just asking questions about their physical belongings and loss. They're also asking some of those deeper questions.
As in, how could God allow this to happen?
How could God allow this to happen? Yeah, where was God in this? And
what answers do you come up with?
Well, those are tough questions to answer. And lots of times we're able to just kind of talk people through the process. And one of the things that I take away, Jen called it luck in terms of people that came out. I might take a different approach and say there was an element of the hand of God in the fact that there were no fatalities as part of the evacuation. And I look at the hand of God showing up in the hundreds of volunteers that came out, and they carried that compassion with them into this community.
Listen. I don't want to get into an argument with you about this,
no.
but I mean, if you're going to use that hand of God argument, some people could argue, maybe the hand of God would have been better served preventing it from happening in the first place, as opposed to having it happen, and then you say the evidence of God is there afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah,
this does get into the it's a mystery kind of.
It does, and we're not going to stand at somebody's home and unpack a mystery for them. We're going to be there and we're going to listen to them first, and then if it's comfortable and it's meaningful to them, we're in a position where we can actually offer to pray for them as well. And for a lot of people, that's a comforting thing. For others, that's not their thing. That's fine, and we'll continue to help them, and we're going to exhibit compassion. Because that's in our DNA and what we do. But there were a lot of people that were asking for prayer and asking some of those big questions. And so to have chaplains there was really, really beneficial.
Paul, let's you and I explore how the PTSD angle may have worked with your volunteers, because of course yours is a group of soldiers, and soldiers know a lot about PTSD. They face it tons of times on the battlefield.
Absolutely, yeah. I think when it comes to looking at how your volunteers cope with stress, Team Rubicon is its own case study. So when you go back to the original premise of Team Rubicon, we say that disasters are our business, but veterans are our passion. And the reason why we do the disaster work that we do is not only to get that community back to a place of healing, but also to get those veterans back to a place of healing as well. So just by being together and creating that sense of purpose, that common identity, and that network to reduce that social isolation that veterans face out in society today after leaving the service, after taking the uniform off, giving them a chance to serve again together with other like-minded people who can relate to, has tremendous value for the veteran community that we find in our volunteer pool.
It gives them purpose again.
Absolutely.
Which they need, I guess.
Yeah.
That's in their DNA.
Yeah.
Interesting. Any examples that you know of veterans who had volunteered to help Fort Mac and may have suffered PTSD as a result of their efforts?
Well, with our volunteers, there were some, and it's kind of funny because in all three of our NGOs, we kind of have different terminology, but we call them operational stress injuries in the Canadian military, and we're moving that into Team Rubicon as well. So it's more of a spectrum for us, and for us, a lot of the stress that goes into the operations and dealing with the trauma is cumulative. So it's not as much of a single trigger for one large event that would cause a kind of a stress reaction, but it could be something adding up and adding up and adding up and wearing down someone's ability to cope. So in those cases, we have a lot of our senior leadership and our normal volunteer base are trained to look out for each other and to kind of identify those signs of failure to cope or struggling to cope. And we intervene with each other as a peer support kind of model. And
are they trained to be able to offer the kind of emotional sustenance to the victims of Fort Mac, the homeowners, the people who live there? Do they know how to deal with that?
Yeah, so in much of the traditional work that Team Rubicon does, it's heavily infrastructure type work, like chainsaws and heavy equipment or debris removal and that kind of stuff. So in a lot of cases, we don't actually get to interact very much with the people who are displaced or affected. But in this case, every single work order that we did as a residential household, we had the resident with us. And the leadership and the coping, the peer support that we use for each other was helpful in helping that resident kind of go through a process to bring closure to the incident and get back on their feet and move on and kind of start a new chapter.
Got it. Just before we talk about whether life has gone on or what kind of situation Fort Mac's in right now, just I want to take 30 seconds on the names of your organizations. Okay, Canadian Red Cross, we get that. Samaritan's Purse, I think we get that, the reference in the Bible to the Good Samaritan. Yours, Team Rubicon. Now, the only reference to the Rubicon I know is Julius Caesar from 2,000 years ago crossing the Rubicon and saying, "We're all in, we're about to invade Rome." Is that the reference here?
That's absolutely the reference, okay. Yes. So Team Rubicon started in 2010 when a couple Marine veterans and some medical professionals were responding to the Haiti earthquake of their own volition because they had what they saw as a skill set that would be useful in bridging that gap between the response to the emergency and before recovery could really get started with the larger NGOs and the bigger government efforts and the international aid that would be coming in. They saw a gap that they needed to fill with their medical expertise and their ability to do expedient, basically grunt work to help the community get back on their feet. So when they crossed the river from the Dominican Republic into Haiti, that was their Rubicon because there was no way to get back and they only had the supplies they had with them. And that was the genesis of the name of our organization.
Gotcha. I wasn't sure about it because, of course, when Caesar crossed the Rubicon, it was with the intention of destroying Rome and taking it back for himself, which is not what you guys are about, but I understand the reference.
Absolutely.
Okay, Jen, come on in here and tell us what life in Fort Mac is like now, a year later.
Well, it depends on what angle you look at it, Steve. There are portions of the community that are doing really well, and they want to look ahead to the future. They're feeling strong and resilient and want to look forward into 2017. Then there are pockets, obviously, of devastated neighborhoods, and the rebuilds are starting. We're not anywhere close to complete, and I think what's important for your listeners to know is that we are working as the Canadian Red Cross at the pace of the community. And not rushing ahead because really recovery is owned by the community, priorities are identified by the community, and we are walking alongside of the community in that journey. And then there are some people that are really struggling. This is a devastating event that continues to echo in their day-to-day, mental health and wellness, financial stress, decision-making fatigue, caregiving fatigue. I think it's also really important, Steve, to know that leaders in the community have been impacted by this disaster personally, and now they're leading their community in recovery, and that's very complex and very tiring. Indigenous community leaders are leading their communities. Mayor Blake is outstanding, and she has been a strong pillar in the community. The social profits and social agencies in the community are trying to figure out what do they do in recovery? They've never been here before. And so it's really a mosaic of recovery instead of start and finish.
Are you able to estimate what percentage of the permanent and or temporary population has returned?
You know, I won't speculate, Steve, but what I can tell you is that we have conducted face-to-face meetings with residents on a daily basis. We're seeing upwards of 25 families a day in Fort McMurray, even as we speak, and over 19,000 assessments with family members and individuals of the community meeting with our personnel in Fort McMurray. It's a bit fluid. People are still making up their minds on where they're going to reside, both in the community, what neighborhood, are they going to rebuild, what does rebuilding look like, and then in addition, we've still got families that are across the province of Alberta and outside of Alberta right now, and they are trying to make decisions based on economic realities, their insurance policies, employment opportunities, having small children, if you're elderly. There's a whole bunch of drivers that go into the decision to return home and remain in the community. And so I would say that it's still quite fluid.
And are you able to help us better understand, you know, in your previous answer, you said that there's so much rebuilding that has not yet taken place. And I suspect that may have come as a surprise to people who, you know, might rightly conclude, shouldn't take a whole year to build a house. So why would the rebuilding not be as advanced as some people might think at this stage?
Well, I'm going to springboard off of your last comment. There's no timeline to rebuilding a life, really. There are community members that have lost everything. And we are in northern Alberta. We're in northern Canada. There are climatic realities at play here. There are decisions that are being made by families and community members that they've never had to make before. Financial decisions about rebuilding, contractors, logistics, accessibility to building expertise. The permit system is complex, and the Canadian Red Cross has been helping out to pay the permit fees for those who were underinsured or uninsured. There's so many complexities at play, Steve, right now on the rebuild side, that really it's collaborating and letting families make their decisions at their own pace.
And one more follow-up here, Jen. I mean, obviously for people who worked in the area, there's the very strong possibility that whatever employment they had disappeared with that fire, and therefore, you know, one wonders what they've done for income for the past year. How have they made ends meet?
Well, the Canadian Red Cross has been working with families and residents on that exactly, that reality. We have been providing financial assistance to families and residents in the community. $183 million has been spent and committed to supporting families on their day-to-day costs of living, helping them with mortgage and rent payments, basic needs, back-to-school supplies. It is tough. We also know that community members have small businesses, and we're working with over 1,600 small businesses to help them with financial assistance to get their to fill the gap between their insurance policies and the unexpected expenses that are related to this wildfire disruption. It's complicated, and there is a lot of financial stress right now in the community, and I would say there's deep decision-making fatigue as well.
Jen, I'm down to my last 20 seconds, so let me ask one final question. I mean, beyond the obvious, namely making a donation to the Canadian Red Cross or to the two organizations represented here in our studio, what would you like people to do?
Oh, well, first, Canadian support has been overwhelming for this event in Alberta. I would really love to see Canadians be prepared at the community level for a disaster or an emergency event in their own community. And please know that this recovery operation is still happening in the community, both by the Canadian Red Cross and by the municipality and the great work of Samaritan's Purse and Team Rubicon. Terrific.
It's great of you, Jen McManus from the Canadian Red Cross, to join us from Calgary, Alberta on our program tonight. Let me also thank Brent Davis from Samaritan's Purse Canada. Brent, you're not going too far because we need you for the next segment as well. And Paul Hassanali, the incident commander with Team Rubicon. Yes, indeed, they crossed the Rubicon and did their best in northern Alberta. I want to thank all of you for joining us on TVO tonight.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.